Hi everyone, it's 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's January the 13th, and they say it's the year 2023, I guess from the birth of Christ. I haven't made many videos, not lately, and not for a while, and I'm sorry about that for those who anticipate them. And the reason is so many other projects that if I don't pay an adequate amount of attention to them, I don't know when they're ever going to get done. There is a book in the works that's being translated from German right now. That's going to take a little bit longer, and copyright checks have to be done. And then there's my geography book. And I guess I can't say how difficult it is. There's really no, excuse the pun, there's no roadmaps for how to do that, for how to do a book critiquing the geography of the Bible as it relates to Palestine or perhaps somewhere else. And they're things that I've been working on for a long time, but oftentimes something else would demand my attention. Something, oftentimes, that I would find in the course of working on that particular book. It's been years now. And so I decided a while ago, you know what, I'm really going to concentrate on this, and come what may, that's going to be a focus point. And I've also had to learn a lot and try to put all the information in a more comprehensible format that would just be more helpful. So much going on that I oftentimes just don't have time to do this. So I'm afraid to say for a long time, mostly it will be these tOP briefs videos. I came across something for me that was really cool the other day. I did not know about this website until just a couple of days ago. I found it. It was waterdesk.org. I was looking around for a really comprehensive list of, really a comprehensive list of hydroelectric dams in the United States, or North America would be okay too, if they just specify where they were at, what country, and then what state or province. And what I came across was this Waterdesk map that actually had it. It is a dam list, but more than that, it's a reservoir list. So all of the dams on this list are not necessarily hydroelectric, but it's pretty comprehensive. It has this list. I'll actually put the link for anybody who wants to see it. I've used this list to begin a document that I'll be using for hopefully a very long time. It's a table with a little bit more information to it that I can use as a reference. So, neat site, waterdesk.org. It's about 2,000 reservoirs and associated dams that they list with it, and they got a lot more information, mostly on the reservoirs, more than the dams, but they will include the intended use of the dams, as well as the capacity of the reservoir, where they're located, things like that. Not bad, really. It's pretty decent. So what happened was, when I got the list and I decided, well, I want to make this table a little bit more comprehensive. I want to include other information that they didn't. So I had to start going through listing by listing. So what they do is they list all of these reservoirs from greatest capacity to lowest capacity. So I knew that the ones that were going to be at the top of the list, greatest capacity, were going to be, not all, but a lot of them were going to be west of the Mississippi, because that's where some of the greatest capacity dams in the United States actually are. Not all, though. For instance, like the Tennessee Valley, I think it's the Tennessee Valley Water Authority or Authority. they control the sites of some just enormous dams east of the Mississippi. And yeah, there's the obvious ones that a lot of people know about, like the ones on the Colorado River and some on the Missouri River. These are like the real behemoth dams. A few on the Columbia River out west here. Very big dams. Most of them hydroelectric, as well as claiming to be oftentimes irrigation and flood control and other purposes. These dams can put out huge amounts of electricity, and they also claim to provide enormous amounts of water via their reservoirs to a lot of places. So we're talking about a dam like Hoover, which is what I was going to talk about today. The infrastructure all connected to the Hoover Dam is huge. They claim to provide water to at least a few different U.S. states. And yeah, it does help that the Hoover Dam is on the border of Arizona and Utah. And it's in an area that's quite close to California, and it's not all that far from Mexico. But they do claim to provide water to 3 or 4 states and Mexico. And power. They have, I believe they have 14 generators there. Some of the biggest that I've ever seen in a hydroelectric dam. And so all I decided to do in getting my extra information for this list, I did not decide, hey, here's a new table that I have for dams that I can use as a reference. I think I'm going to go and I'm going to see if the official stories for these dams make sense or not. Because I really don't have the time. A, I don't have the time. And B, I don't really want to. It's not my desire to just find lies or inconsistencies in everything. I really don't. In fact, I'll be really honest with you. I really just want to find the truth of, like, I would prefer if I came across information that was necessary to me and what I do, researching in general. I would prefer to come across sources that were just chock full of good, verifiable facts. That would be lovely. But that sort of thing doesn't tend to happen. And of course, I am at Wikipedia, but I mean, with as much criticism as people have about Wikipedia, rightfully so, they're really just echoing. Wikipedia is just kind of like the distillation of most of the mainstream popular sources, kind of in one place. And in that way, I find them very useful, because you can get essentially your cliff notes of the official story right there at Wikipedia. Good for you. Now, what I did was I first wanted to make sure that the information on that table from this water desk, see, I forgot the name already, from the water desk was accurate. Because what they do is they give you a list of all these reservoirs as of 2013. And in that table, one of the things they do, they give you how old that reservoir and thus should be, thus the dam, from 2013 back. So I was checking that. Yeah, I did know if it was Lake Mead, it was associated with Hoover Dam, but I just wanted to take a look at a few things. This is really just, and this is what I have to tend to do whenever I check anything, thought exercises. Just critical thought exercises. And if a number of these thoughts or ideas are incorrect, well, that's okay, because we can find the correct answer instead. You know, something that has always irritated me about people who that support the popular story, the mainstream establishment story, no matter what it is, it doesn't matter if we're talking about history or science or medicine, ideas. So many of these people that support that version, the establishment version, they make it out like the people who are questioning it are so way out of line. How silly, how stupid, how ignorant. Whereas I disagree. I think that it is very intellectually honest. And it also takes a good amount of intellectual work, a lot of intellectual exercise to actually read and consider the establishment's story and to weigh all the parts to see if they actually add up. And here's the thing, the establishment, they don't get a pass. The establishment should never, ever, ever get a pass on any claim they make concerning anything, ever. They should be held to the highest standard possible and to account for all claims they make at any time, in perpetuity. Always. And they should always be ready and willing to defend, as in showing good evidence for all claims being made, all the time. So anyone who comes along and says, well, I'm not sure if I believe any claim in any area, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's an establishment or an accepted claim, anyone is well within their rights to come along and say, well, I'm not so sure about it. Maybe they're not so sure about it because there are certain aspects to it that don't particularly make sense, or maybe they're just not sure about it because it's coming from the establishment and they've just been lied to and treated like idiots by the establishment for too long. And maybe like me, they've just gotten to the point where they don't accept anything that the establishment says. Now, you can't get to the point where everything has to be a lie, because everything isn't a lie. In fact, every single lie that's told successfully, every single lie that is successful, and especially every single lie that is pretty strong, it is pretty strong because it is mixed with enough of the truth to make it strong. But if it is a lie, it's like mixing an impurity into an adhesive. It's still going to be strong, but that impurity that you've mixed into that adhesive is also going to make it weak. And so eventually it's going to give. If everybody just does their due diligence and examines every claim made, if for nothing else, or if for no other reason or end result, as a thought exercise to keep our brains strong and fit. Let's do thought exercises. So I decided to take a look at, I went to the Lake Mead Wikipedia, and I was a little bit more interested. The lake is important. And here's one of the things that's important about Lake Mead. There is a little bit of description that we're not going to remember all the specific numbers here, but hopefully the gargantuan aspect of some of these numbers will stick with us a little bit. So Lake Mead, we'll see this on the next page, began to be filled because it's a lake that is made from an arch gravity dam, the Hoover Dam, first named the Boulder Dam according to their story, in 1936. And now Lake Mead, let's get some specs here. At maximum capacity, Lake Mead is 112 miles long. Now, that measurement has to be a linear, I would imagine, from the side of Hoover Dam, which I can bring up here on Google Earth. So Hoover Dam would be right here where Highway 93 is crossing. So that would have to be pretty much, I would think, a linear measurement, but I just want to find out real quick, because I know it would have to essentially stop over here where they say Colorado River is, and I believe there's another dam over here, because it does make sense. You're always going to find dams. How long is that? Yeah, it's 28 miles. So they're not talking about that. They're talking a linear measurement all the way through here. And I don't know if they're also counting, there's this huge leg of Lake Mead that actually goes directly north, and you can see that there seems to be also riverbeds that feed into it. Whether those are active rivers up there or not, I'm not sure. Sorry. But that's long, 120 miles. Maybe that's everything counted all together, and that's run of river. Maybe. That's big, right? 532 feet deep at its greatest depth. That is deep. It's very deep. It has a surface elevation of 1,229 feet above sea level. Has a surface area of 247 square miles. Again, that's just big. Lake Mead's very, very big. If anybody's listening to this that's visited points of Lake Mead or live near that, you know it's really big. This is an enormous impound or reservoir for this one dam, and of course, what helps so much is that you had these huge canyon. This was actually built in a canyon. So you had these huge canyon walls to impound all of this water without having to build what is one of the most time-consuming and it must be exacting portions of a lot of dams, which is the earthen portion of the dam. You have to build those so well and be so exact about the composition of all of the parts that you're using in that, the clay core and the cobble and the sand and earth and how these things are mixed and how well they're compacted. It's no joke, because if that gives, that is absolute disaster. So there's a big advantage that you have these rock canyon walls to impound this enormous lake. It's just such a big lake. So it says it contains 28.23 million acre feet, which translates to 32.236 kilometers cubed of water. Now back on my table, the capacity is 29,753 and 167, and I want to say that that's cubic capacity. Yeah, AF. Okay, so the AF is the acre feet, and acre feet is equal to about 1,233 meters cubed. The acre foot. Go back. 29,753,167 acre feet, which is about 1,200 meters cubed. The capacity is, this is a really huge lake. Really huge lake. So back to it. The Hoover Dam. So the Hoover Dam, like any dam, has a story to it. And that's what I did. I went about reading the story of the Hoover Dam. And there were some things about it that I thought were just interesting that I thought I should share. Some of those things that you might go, it's interesting. And some things that maybe are a little bit more than just odd or strange. Okay, so for a little bit of this, I'll just be reading copy from Wikipedia, and then, of course, commenting as we go. So the Hoover Dam is a concrete arch gravity dam in the Black Canyon of the Colorado River. It is on the border between the U.S. states of Nevada and Arizona. It was constructed, according to their story, it was constructed between 1931 and 1936 during the Great Depression. Now, here's something that's interesting. I'm not an economist. In fact, I really hate not understanding the economy. I don't hate that. And I know I have at least one accountant out there that listens regularly, and they can help explain these things whenever it would help, maybe in the comments or wherever. One other thing. I gotta say this. If you're not in my Facebook group, the Ovary Project Panoply, Panoply, just get a real basic account on Facebook and join. Here's why. One thing, I'm not producing a lot of videos lately because of all of the academic stuff that I have to do instead, but I post almost every day bits and pieces of information that I come across, that I'm working on in that group. It's a way that I can get little bits and pieces out. If you don't have a Facebook account, yeah, I know what Facebook is all about. Anybody who's wise knows that. But still, just whatever. Get one, join the group, and participate, please. Anyways, I'm sure somebody could help me to understand at least the prevailing theory of why so many really big projects oftentimes are being done in these really bad economic downturns. I'm sure it could be said, well, the government, that's good, because then the government would be using their power, to legislate these projects and thus stimulating the economy and so on and so forth. Well, maybe that does work for things like economic downturns, even though most people who are wise to what's going on know that the Depression was engineered. But, that same thing doesn't apply during times of war. You'd be surprised at the really large projects like dams that were said to be built during at least the two major world wars, World War I and World War II in the United States. Really big project. In fact, here's the thing. The ideas in their story behind these dams and the timing of why they were built and everything, there are aspects to them that are often so incredulous that they say that they were shipping over to the United States German prisoners of war and using them as slave labor to help build these amazing projects during a time when wars are not good for a country's economy. They're not, because you're really spending a lot for a lot of times nothing. I mean, this is why when a losing side, or this is why a losing side is oftentimes forced to pay these massive excessive amounts of reparations, because countries lose. They lose. It's a drain. It's a drain, and it's supposed to be a drain in just about every way. Of course, except for those who are profiteering, right? So sometimes it's really weird to see things like this. The biggest dam project, DAM, biggest dam project in the United States. And in the heart of the Great Depression, the 30s. So, dedicated on September 30, 1935, by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, its construction was the result of a massive effort involving thousands of workers. By the way, this isn't the only thing going on, folks. Out west, projects that are enormous, and Mount Rushmore, that was supposed to be going on through the 30s too. Its construction was the result of a massive effort involving thousands of workers and cost over 100 lives. It was referred to as Hoover Dam after President Herbert Hoover in bills passed by Congress during its construction. That's interesting, a sitting president. But, I mean, maybe not that without precedent. It was named Boulder Dam by the Roosevelt administration. The Hoover Dam name was restored by Congress in 1947. So, they say that since the year 1900 that the Black Canyon and nearby Boulder Canyon had been investigated for their potential to support a dam that would control floods, provide irrigation water, and produce hydroelectric power. In 1928, Congress authorized the project. The winning bid to build the dam was submitted by a consortium named Six Companies, Inc. Now, this is really interesting, this consortium, and what they chose to be their name. Excuse me. If it was like 5 companies, or if it was 7 Companies, Inc., I don't know if I'd really pay that much attention. But when they start using these base numbers, 6, 12, and sometimes a little bit, the 3, 3, 3, 9, not as much, but definitely these, because everything that I've seen essentially looks like everything natural should be gauged in a base 12 system. I know because of Revelation and everything, everybody's got this idea that, 6s are bad. I don't know if they mean the same thing that we think they mean, but it is interesting. They say it was was contracted by, and the bid was won by this consortium of contractors. A number of them, of course, having to do with railroads, the building of which, in my opinion, the amount of railroad they say were built in this country and the amount of time they say that they were built is literally impossible. It's absolutely, literally impossible. From the time that the first rails started going in 1827 to 1900, they claimed that they had enough railroad laid in the United States, we'll say from coast to coast. All of the contiguous United States, they say they had enough rail laid, which also includes blasting for tunnels. It absolutely includes grading. Grading is so important. You'll see this in, if you watch, say, old videos that they make of projects where they have to build a railroad. Just to cart materials to projects and stuff. Grading, super important. They had to grade all of the railroads that they say that they built. They got to build bridges for them. They have to build, the changes between tracks, stations, like the whole infrastructure of the railroads, not just laying down track, which is also important, the laying down of track and the way that the track is laid down with stone ties, the specifics of the rail being used. They've got to be right on the money, or else you've got train wrecks on your hands. This is no light undertaking. And they say that they laid so much rail in the United States from 1827 to the year 1900. It adds up to this. One railroad track from New York to Los Angeles per year every year from 1827 to 1900. That's how much track. That's how many linear miles of track they claim were built in the United States in those years, in that 73 years. I won't even begin to entertain that as a possibility. Anyways, this company, this consortium, it's called 6 companies. Most of them had something, if not a lot, to do with supposedly building railroads. They were, in a sense, some of them like west of the Mississippi railroad barons and other. So they say they formed this consortium because one of them alone could not afford the bid bond and the performance bond, which is really weird because these are supposed to all be pretty big companies, and because they couldn't on their own, it's a little weird to me. And they say that they named themselves 6 companies as an inside joke, because they say there was a Chinese, some kind of a Chinese group in San Francisco where one of the larger of the 6 were from, that was also named 6 companies. And it's the excuse is really stupid. So what they say is this. Now, they say they started building this in 1931, but the thing was, the government did not issue its prints for bid until January of 1931. And they say that they issued all of their plans for bid in January 1931, and within 2 months, the contract was awarded to this 6 companies, and they began work within 2 months of the, I guess it would have been the Bureau of Reclamation that actually issued the plan. Bureau of Reclamation. The Bureau of Reclaiming. Not claiming, the Bureau of Reclaiming. The Bureau of Reclamation is basically the government agency or bureau that has to do with just about all of these projects west of the Mississippi. So yeah, record time they began this. And of course, the company that won the bid, being the 6 companies, part of it was a performance bond. So performance bond is that you have to put up a certain amount of money that guarantees that you're going to have the project done within a certain specified amount of time. In this case, it was 7 years. And this 6 company, they put up, I think the performance bond on this job was $5 million to be done in that 7 years. And the official story says that they actually, the official story says they completed this 2 years ahead of schedule. 2 years ahead of schedule, which is kind of amazing, especially when there's stories of strikes, almost their entire workforce walking off the job, heat stroke killing people, Las Vegas was like 24 miles away or so, if you think about the logistical problems with that. So they say they built this Boulder City as a model city where they would house most of the workers. Problem is, they didn't start on the construction of Boulder City till about the time they started on the construction of the dam. So they're trying to say that they had these sort of temporary barracks for the construction of the dam. Now, I will veer off this a bit and say that, yes, you can find videos out there from various parties on YouTube or archive.org that claim to have a lot of footage of the Boulder Dam project being constructed. Is all that footage authentic? Is the first question that should be asked, because I think more than one party actually made a fully edited film. Like, I believe Periscope Film has one of the official versions of the film made about the building of Boulder Dam. It's hard to say. If you watch these films, you look at the shots. Certainly it does look like many of those shots are of what appear to be large construction or earth construction sites at a large canyon. But is it the right canyon? It's the same issue with the supposed photos and bits of film that they say exist of the mountain Rushmore before it began to be carved. Is that the right mountain or not? And it's really hard to actually prove one way or another that we're looking at the right canyon or not. It's very difficult to prove that they didn't have a lot of very good video editing techniques. It's very hard to prove that a lot of the shots that they're using of men drilling for explosion of like the tunnels and riding these tracks down to the work sites and everything. It's very difficult to prove that's actually there. And this project, furthermore, it is also very difficult for me to believe that film cameras only came into existence and use very, very recently, and then only beginning with monochrome and then later going to color. If you just look at the official story of the development of cameras and films, whether we're talking about just a static or film, moving pictures, that story basically goes like this. So from ancient times, even the old Greek mathematicians and scientists understood the ability of light to develop an image, like a simple image. Like through a glass or something like that, you could develop an image against a wall, projecting on a wall, just the idea of a lens, shining light through a lens, and it projecting and developing that image. So they say they understood that from like BC times. But, of course, man just couldn't understand the chemical aspects that they would need to understand to actually put this on film. Using like the silver nitrate and development and all that. Man is just, everybody knows just how lazy and complacent man is. So apparently man waited 2,000 years to, surprise, surprise, the 1800s to start developing that. And where am I going with all this? Where I'm going is, yes, there are a lot of scenes in these official videos that the scenes appear to be, for one thing, models. They do. There are some scenes that really do look like they were just models. And I think models are actually far easier to pass off as being real with monochrome film, grainy monochrome film. And there could be something to that. But more than that, a lot of that footage really, believe it or not, that could be authentic footage of when the dam was actually built. My problem is, I don't know when that was. I don't know if that was 90 years ago, or if that was hundreds of years ago. And here's the thing. If you look at the broader area where this was built and where other large dams were built, I guess we'll take this area of Arizona and Nevada and all, ain't much around there. And now they say Las Vegas was around there, but also at that time they only claimed that it had a few thousand inhabitants, maybe. And the thing is, not just Hoover Dam, but a lot of dams that I've visited since I became so interested in dams and the sort of effort that they require in the building of a dam. They're not... I think a dam is one of the most involved projects, because you are attempting to hold back water. And that water is going to flow. That water is going to flow. It's going to find lower ground. So building a dam is just a hell of a thing. But a lot of these dams that even I've visited east of the Mississippi, they're in locations that they're pretty out of the way. They're pretty out of the way. And it seems like there's this pattern. The more out of the way the location, the more likely they are to be closed off more to the public. The ones that they put on rivers that they're right near the hearts of towns, because a lot of the dams I visited are actually in Michigan, so they're on rivers that are actually emptying out into one of the Great Lakes or something. And so a lot of times you take a good river that's falling pretty well and making just a great river to put a dam on, especially if there's a lot of fall to the river. It is really fantastic, because when you build that dam, you can build that dam and only have an impound lake or a reservoir that goes back a mile, maybe. And it's going to contain plenty enough water for you to get, that constant pressure of the water through the turbines for you to make energy with in that dam. And you can put another one a mile or so up the river and get the same result, because the river's falling so much over a certain amount of time. So that's why you're going to see a series, typically, of dams. They're going to be in series on this river. But yeah, that's the thing. So many dams that I've visited or that I've looked into, I know exist, they're pretty out of the way. They're pretty out of the way. If you had populations of people in any given area, city, or even rural area, and they didn't have, they really didn't have freedom of movement, and you were controlling all of their information, the great majority of the population would have absolutely no way of knowing whether or not there was a big dam that already existed years before anyone claimed that it existed or not. And here's the thing. When you design any dam, and we'll just go with the hydroelectric dams, me not being an engineer, I still know, here's the basics. If you're going to design that dam, you have to figure on certain contingencies. That's one of the biggest things when you're working with water. You have to figure on how you're going to properly divert the water so that nobody gets killed and your job site is pretty water free, especially if you're pouring concrete. You want people to be able to move around, make forms. You want the concrete to be able to cure well. You don't want too much water going through. You really need to divert the river. And in a good way, you need to understand the amount of cubic feet per second the river's putting out at any given time of the year so that you know that your diversion techniques are good. And you also have to figure on that for your reservoir, your impound lake, and where your spillway is going to be, how high that spillway is going to be, how much water is going to have to roll over that to complete the run of river, and where your emergency spillway or spillways are going to be in case there are those fluke storms, floods, melts, things that happen. So there's so much that goes into that. Not a small thing. It's a big thing. And the reason I say that is this. So if somebody said, well, how would a dam, let's say that the population was greatly reduced in North America for some time, for whatever reason, great wars, catastrophe. I don't know. I don't know that I believe in this idea of great catastrophes. I know people seem to think that there is evidence for them. I disagree. I think a lot of the evidence is actually more literary than anything else, and I am very skeptical, of course, of those accounts. However, what if North America had sat relatively vacant, and to the point to where certain areas, let's just say like this area where the Hoover Dam and other very large dams now exist, sat with no one to maintain them? Wouldn't they succumb to the rivers? I personally don't think so if they were designed well. If they were designed well and they were built well, no, I don't think so. I think that if that happened, where they were abandoned for a very long time, well, let's just say for a very long time, we'll just say for a century, I think what would probably happen, if the spillways, like in the case of Hoover Dam has a spillway that actually empties into one of the numerous tunnels that had to be blasted first before the dam could be built. These huge tunnels had to be blasted from hundreds of feet before where the finished dam sits to hundreds of feet after, because they needed room for the powerhouses and whatnot, and the tail race. The tunnels actually meet up a couple hundred feet after the tail race from the powerhouses. So very big, very long tunnels. And the spillway is actually if you're facing the dam, not from the downriver side, you're looking up at the spillways be to the left. It's on the, I guess we would say, the southeast side. If these spillways that they've engineered into the dam work correctly, they function well, and these are really big spillways, they lead to very, very big tunnels, they would simply just continue to function as they should. And they are so big, and there is such a lack of forestation in this area, I don't think you have to worry, for one thing, about them getting all blocked up or anything like that. And if they did, there are other areas where this river can spill into. And with as hot as it is out there, that never seems to be an issue, because there's so many complaints about evaporation that I've heard so often. So I don't see that as a terrible problem. If it sat, if a big dam like the Hoover Dam sat vacant for a century or more, to be perfectly honest, if it was well designed, it was well built in the first place, I think it could actually sit without running or maintenance much longer than one might think, without succumbing to nature. That's one. Like, if for some reason, let's say, if it did actually sit unmaintained, and for some reason this whole area was wiped out of people, so on and so forth. I know that there could be a lot of theories like, well, wouldn't the American Indian have stories about all of this stuff? Yeah, maybe. If there were some that lived around there, maybe. But you know what? They didn't do a lot of publishing, and it wouldn't be very hard to simply make those kinds of things go away. It wouldn't be difficult at all. Now, the third thing is what I think is really a stronger theory. I have a hard time believing that North America was ever vacant. I have a hard time believing that North America ever sat vacant. I think it's possible that North America did exist for a period of time with a lower population of a certain demographic, maybe. And maybe this was through a number of very severe wars. Catastrophe too? I don't know, but maybe. I don't think North America has ever been vacant. So the idea of first off discovering North America is ridiculous. I don't even think that should even be entertained by people who are intelligent. But for a long time I thought, well, maybe it just sat vacant in the sense that really what there were is more primitive peoples that lived here, and not, less primitive people that came back later. And the more I thought about that, the more I thought, I don't think that works either. And I don't think it's necessary. The thing is, if you had enough people that were they didn't like, or they were enemies with other people who, let's say, were largely killed off or carried away over to Europe and other places like Australia and who knows where else. And these people or their tribal leaders had at a certain point began to convene and discuss this problem that they had with a number of the inhabitants that once lived here in North America and had since been carted off around here, there, and wherever, that it would be very good to actually re-educate them and reintroduce them into these areas and give them a new story like that, it was discovered a couple hundred years ago and all this infrastructure had been built since and so on and so forth. That's, I think, in my opinion, that's a far more reasonable theory, which, again, that means that in every major city in the United States and in every significant area of the United States, industry, infrastructure, and everything else, they are being run by people who, if not now, at some point, their ancestors at least, were perfectly conscious of what was going on and participated in this, they participated in the removal of these people who I believe eventually were called, not the Gauls or the Celts, those people were removed long before this. The last bit, remnants of not only Germanics, but Asher, remnants of them still were here. Odin, these are different people in different places described in the Bible as being inhabitants of the land who would eventually be carried away by forces outside the land. It's not just Israel, it's not just Judah. It was a number of inhabitants, mostly consisting over a certain amount of time of Israel and Judah that would have lived in the land, been taken away, shipped abroad. Probably, my assumption is that they were extraordinarily difficult to deal with, like as in pig-headed, like as in very difficult slaves, not good slaves, maybe very prone to violence, and they had to be dealt with because of these things. thus the shipping around, the orphan trains, separating families, re-educating, bringing them back here. And if you look at something like Hoover Dam, a site like this is probably one of the easier sites to convince everybody that it was built, let's say, in the 1930s, when there's a lot of factors that seem to point towards that not being very accurate. Okay, so I'm piecing this in a few hours later. I had to run to an appointment earlier, so I wrapped it up and I realized I hadn't even included this. This is such an important component of this whole mystery and of inconsistencies concerning the Hoover Dam in Lake Mead. So, and this doesn't even begin to exhaust all the inconsistencies that we could talk about. But you know, a lot of those are in the details. But here's a big one. And it's very interesting. What I have here on the screen is, well, basically it's a commercial map, like a propaganda map, that was produced and copyrighted. Now, if you went to this map and you zoomed in real close, you can see that copyright, 1939, Las Vegas, Nevada Chamber of Commerce. All right. So by Raymond Winters is the artist who made this. Now you'll notice in this image, the Hoover Dam is to the lower right. It's immediately left of the small rectangular sign at the bottom right-hand corner. Hoover Dam's right there. And we have the tail race of the Colorado River here in front of the Hoover Dam. And you can clearly see, because if we zoomed in, and really got in there, and I can see it from where I'm at without it, we have these intake towers. Let's see if I can go back here real quick, just so I can kind of show you what we're looking at. Now, what you have right here in this image, you have these intake towers that are exposed a lot. You see that bathtub ring, they call it, right there? And so the levels are down because recently, in recent years, the levels have been extremely low because there's so much evaporation. I mean, the average temperatures in this area can be well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so what they designed this to sit at maximum capacity with the waters right up below these little these little catwalks between the intake towers. Water level would sit just below that, and anything past that, if you see off to the right here, is the main spillway, and that main spillway is designed to take really the full normal discharge of the Colorado River. Okay, so this is very low. But I want to go back here and look at this picture again at archive. Published in 1939. So if it was published in 1939, and you look at this whole picture and you would think it done in 1939, this artist, Raymond Winters, he hand drew all of this. He had to have hand drawn all of this from some sort of existing map, and look at what a bird's eye view it is. Now I'll go in, see if I can get something kind of similar on Google Earth. And of course, he's looking at it at an angle. He's not straight up in the air. So we'll do something. And yeah, his image is skewed. His image is skewed just a bit. Look at that again. So we've got Las Vegas, and then we got the highway actually over to the right of Vegas. We're seeing in here Red Rock Canyon and all that. So if put this down and maybe kind of like that. Okay, so you can see this. I'll take the places off and the roads off Google Map, and I will clear my measurements. Okay, so here we got the downstream part of Colorado River, and over here to the right, just below the middle of the screen is the upstream part of Colorado River, and this entire Just enormous body of water here, just huge. That's all Lake Mead there, and different branches of Lake Mead, because it's just filling in this canyon. Got the Grand Canyon just over to the right of all this. A lot of canyons down in here, because it's that kind of land over there. So here's his. It's pretty. It really is. Besides for the fact that it is definitely a commercial. I keep wanting to say propaganda, but yeah, nothing wrong with saying it. Propaganda map, because of course it's exaggerating, you know, Las Vegas and some other things. But as far as size of certain things, they're pretty good, except for Las Vegas. And I mean, there's nowhere. I don't think there's anywhere near that kind of trees. Maybe the downtown area where they planted and irrigated. But anyways, so he's trying to make Las Vegas look pretty lush and beautiful. It's a desert. But yes, you can plant things in a desert and they'll grow if you create all the right conditions, including soil. And but I'll tell you, not just anything's going to grow in that heat. So, but I'm getting off topic. The main topic is this. The lake, as you see it here, is all filled in. I mean, it is entirely filled in. You see Lake Mead there. Go back to Lake Mead here. All filled in here. See that? All filled in. Let's see. Back up a little bit. Now see if I turn back Google Earth here to 1950, we can see that only little pockets of Lake Mead are filled in. So what we can see from this is that when the levels drop in Lake Mead, this whole middle section here is more filled up. It's higher in elevation. The land in this area is much higher in elevation than this pocket of canyon, and this pocket of canyon over here, and a little bit this pocket right here, and up this little bed here. We also see that's higher in elevation. I guess we could go up to maybe 1965 and see if it'll give us anything better. It gives us the same image. 1977, maybe. Can you give us another image here, folks? Google Earth. Now, 1984. Now we've got a new image. It is up from that old image, and it is actually probably up. Well, depending on how long the drought's been going on. That's 2019. They say right there. Okay, we'll go back to 1984. Right there, let's do 1984. Right there at its maximum capacity. Probably. Pretty close. So what's interesting is if we go to 84, which is really close to like max level that it would have had. So the drought's been just in more recent years, because I don't think there's anywhere we could go from 84 forward where we're going to be seeing greater levels. You see, actually it's receded a little bit in the late 90s. Okay, and it's receding more. But you'll see it at maximum levels, like back here in 84, that you have this basically like a peninsula looking area, which is to the northwest of the Hoover Dam. All right, and then if you keep following up northwest, you'll see this interesting sort of peninsular shape in the rock here with you know, what looks to be like a road right there. You see, connecting it at like maximum level is what we're looking at. Because when you start going forward, as drought conditions are draining the lake, and now you don't just have that little hairline connecting. And I can't zoom in on these older maps, so Google Earth doesn't really let me zoom in much on the older maps. I'll take it because it just gets all so fuzzy. And now here it's with, you know, it's very droughted, and you can see the bathtub line. This is where it would be with that little town there, and that's probably a little road right there that would lead to this big bump right here. Okay, anybody who's real familiar with Lake Mead would probably know what that place was right there. Okay, so we'll keep this zoomed out. Now this, go back to maximum levels. oh gosh, sorry, I went back to 1950. 1984 maximum levels. We've got this little peninsula here, and this little sort of quite a peninsula, almost like an island with a little line, little road there. Maximum levels. And we'll go back to this this propaganda drawing, 1939 copyright from Raymond Winters. We see the little peninsula right here sticking out in the rock next to Hoover Dam, and when we follow up, boom, we see our little island there with the small joining road right there. We see it's filled to maximum capacity. Again, we see it's filled to maximum capacity because the intake towers are buried right up to their catwalks. This lake is sitting at maximum capacity right here, okay? And we don't know, how long do you suppose it took him to make this, to get the maps? Obviously, there were maps. Here's the thing. When he drew this, if he copyrighted it in 1939, who knows how long it took him to draw it? Maybe it took him only a few months to do this. Maybe it took him a month. I don't know what he got paid for this. It's very detailed, and it's colored. It looks like it's probably colored with watercolors. Watercolor and ink. Of course, he started out with a sketch. He would have had to have done that sketch from a graph, smaller, and then blew it up larger. There's some work. There's some work in this, for sure. Big time work. And he would have had to have been going from surveys, at least, unless somebody was up in a big hot air balloon and took a great picture prior to this, far prior to this, and the lake would have had to have been filled at that time. Okay, either which way. So the work to go into knowing that the lake was filled to capacity and all of the shapes that all of the water was filling in at that capacity would have had to have been done before he completed this and copyrighted it in 1939. And the problem is what? The problem is that Lake Mead did not fill to capacity, as you see here, until 1941. Until 1941. They claim a couple of years before that, it was filled to within a couple hundred, 100 and so feet lighter than it was at full capacity. And if that's the case, you wouldn't be seeing this little island shape here with the road out to it, as we saw when we zoomed up or back in Google Earth. It disappears because it's not to capacity. See right there? It just disappears. It becomes more solid part of the land right there. That's one thing. And the second thing, of course, is that we wouldn't see these intake towers with the catwalks sitting right at the water level as we see them in the drawing. That's a big problem. It's a giant continuity problem. And if I may, before I just wrap up this inserted section here, I just want to touch on a couple of things. One thing is, this is what they say on the screen here. They call this the jumbo rig. And this is literally two platforms it's supposed to be sitting on, basically like a large, well, sort of like a large bed, a very, very wide bed, high capacity truck, like semi sort of truck, which you can see it in some of the propaganda films that have been produced. And what they would say that this thing would back in, and that these guys would be drilling these big holes with these bits here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and another 6 here, and it looks like we got one here, and we might have one here and one here. It's about 16, making this, sort of pattern. And there may have been even more below. Looks like, look, it's got. Now I don't know how this rig that I saw on the propaganda films, it's taken a lot of weight. It's taken a lot of weight. And they would say that they would drill these pretty deep, and then they would put dynamite in there, and then they'd blast, and then all the heavy equipment would have to go in to clear all of that away. And then they would go back in, do it all over again. Okay, that's what they say. Now this is, I'll tell you something, I wouldn't like to be these guys, because you look at this, the protective cover for this whole operation, the guys on top, it doesn't even, it's not even protecting these guys on the front here top. Like these guys down here would be okay when they're running their drills. You think these guys on the top want to do that with no protective cover up here? I don't know. Boy, I don't know. And let me show you something that's just, to me, it's real crazy. When they tell me it came in 2 years ahead of schedule, and when I start looking at everything that had to be involved, because I knew it was a lot. I knew it was a lot. I don't think we have, no, we don't have linear measurements right there. So, oh, and yeah, here's one other spillway. So you have one big spillway that's right here. This is the southeast of the dam. I don't think there's another spillway over here. And then there's this Arizona spillway. And now I don't know if it starts, yep, maybe right here is where they've got an intake hole for that spillway there. Anyways, now this just illustrates again, like I was telling you, could something sit untended to for a dam for an extraordinarily long amount of time? And my answer is, I believe it could. Would some spillways get blocked up? Maybe. So if that happened, what would happen? If the lake kept rising, it would rise to about the height of the dam. And if this dam was built well, and I think these gravity arch designs are brilliant. They're so strong. I just don't think any water right up to the very top, and you could have water just spilling over, spilling over, spilling over. Debris. What debris? What debris is going to come against this dam? There's no trees on the shoreline. I think it'd be fine. But let me see. I want to just get a linear measurement here real quick to give you an idea. Just kind of zooming in on this dam here. Okay. Now, oh, must have been a cloudy day. That's sad for us. So let's see if I can find the intake. I'll have to go back out here a little bit. All right, so there's a channel. That looks like it's the intake there, which I did not see. And there seems to be another one here. Yeah, because there's two spillways up here. Then we have probably this would be the third spillway there. All right, let's take another look real quick. And I'm just trying to see if we can spot those two spillways. They'd have to be right in this area here. Now, there's a reason I'm doing this, because we know that the exit for those spillways, they're located about right here. And I'm going to open up. We're going to go to feet on my measurement. We're just going to measure in a straight line, even though their tubes aren't going in a straight line. And they're starting pretty high up and going low. And you have to remember something. They also would have had these other tubes. Go back here. There's two different sets of these pipes that are feeding out to the tail race here of the Colorado River. And they are at different levels. This one was probably the first one that had to be designed. And all that rock blasted. It's gigantic. I mean, we're probably talking about 30 feet high, 30 feet all the way in diameter. And then they lined both of these on both sides with concrete. They had to do this before they did anything else. They would have started all of this above the line of the existing river. Okay, and then they had to have those finished. Then they had to build the cofferdams. And you want to build that cofferdam pretty good, because you wouldn't want really much water getting into this whole area where you got guys working and trying to to pour and cure the concrete and everything. You'd want to have that, really, you'd want to have that cofferdam pretty watertight as much as possible, and it all being diverted through these just enormous tunnels. And remember, there's two of them. There's one very low down, which they can just basically use as, run of river. And then you have the ones higher up, which they can use to control levels. And then you have that last spillway up here, very front near the dam itself. So based on about where we look like we're starting to ending, go back here to Google Earth. That's got to be somewhere in the neighborhood of, here's where they end. They got to be starting somewhere. You see this line right here? Now, it makes me wonder if they would be right in front of that line, because that would be like, don't bring your boat in front of this, because you never want people's boats to go near to where the water's intaking. So let's just assume the water's intaking maybe right around here. And see if we can go in a path, not a straight line. Maybe right about here. And then we got to go up and into the wall of the rock. And then we'll go up there. Down to here. Yeah. So that's over a half mile each tunnel that had to be dug, and they had to line in concrete about 30-foot diameter before they could even start and build this huge cofferdam before they even started this project. And they said they had it done 2 years ahead of schedule. And this isn't just an enormously impressive gravity-fed dam with these enormously impressive intake towers and other built-in spillways. 4. Now that you look at the plans, there's 4. Looks like 4 of these 30-foot diameter tunnels at different levels that had to be drilled right into the rock. So each one of them over a half mile. Okay, that's a few miles of tunnels just in those, and we're not counting the tunnels. So, all right, then you've got the towers that are feeding the penstock, which go into these smaller penstocks, which might go into scroll tubes. That's all in the rock. That all has to be drilled out of all this solid rock. The complex that makes up the Hoover Dam is beyond impressive. It is quite a complex. And I'm just talking about the Hoover Dam. I'm not talking about any extras. The spillways. There is a spillway on this side too. I just couldn't see it from some of the pictures. So yeah, you do. You've got a spillway right before the dam on the west side and the east side. And you have these spillways, basically kind of level controller spillways back here, going to another tube down below, and all of these multiple outlets down below. You've got 2 powerhouses that are designed, oddly enough, in the designs, it calls for 8 turbines / generators, 8 generators on each side. These generators are so big. My goodness, they had, I think, one or two of the pictures I saw with some guys up on top of these generators. Freaking huge. The only thing that's weird is that in the official pictures, now I've seen the one room with the 8 generators, but the other one looks like it only has 6, which is weird. I don't know if this actually follows the designs they had. That one's pretty weird. But like I said, it's a complex, and it's just the most amazing. I mean, I'm really blown away at the great sort of engineering, multiple kinds of engineering that go into any hydroelectric dam, whether they're small and they only got there's a hydroelectric dam near me that only has 1 turbine and 1 generator, and it produces a heck of a lot of power still for that. And it's real interesting the way this one is set up. the water drop to it and all. It's real neat. Maybe sometime I can go over that. But so yeah, I'll wrap up this segment, and then it's going to flash back over to my earlier video and me wrapping it up because I had to split. So that's pretty much all on the Hoover Dam. I don't think anything about the Hoover Dam, the official story, really lines up with what we can see reality-wise. So that's as much as I have on this particular installment about Hoover Dam and some other theories. Hopefully I can make more videos soon. But either which way, come join the Facebook group. If you want to donate and help out, there's a lot of ways to do that. You can follow links that I put in the description. There's still the donation page open on the Obrew Project website, and so on and so forth. So either way, till next time, take care.